All right. So, last speaker here, Derek Woodske. His technical specs, the dude's an All-American thrower, national champion, freak athlete, self-proclaimed Canadian jumpman. Yeah, the dude's a freak. But the thing that stood out to me most about Derek, as I've gotten to know him the last couple years, is not only his technical ability as a coach, his well-rounded wisdom, knowledge, intelligence, but his generosity as a coach. You talk about somebody who will give of themselves and of their abilities without anything in return. This is your guy. And as we were kind of hanging out the other night, one of the things that jumped out to me is he mentioned the ability of a great coach as someone who can take university concepts and break them down to elementary ideas so that anybody can understand them. This is the dude who has as much ability to do that as anyone I've met in my entire time being around Sorinex or this industry. So I guarantee you're going to get a lot out of this. I'm really excited that he's here, and I'm lucky that I got to intro this guy. So enough from me. Ladies and gentlemen, Derek Woodske.
Is my mic on? All right, we're ready. Okay, so what we're going to talk a little about, which is the completely opposite way you would say that normally if you weren't nervous. So what we're going to talk a little bit about is I use a system of goal setting that is very similar to what a lot of coaches will use in terms of a system for program design. I use macro, meso, and microcycles for goal setting, the same way that we would use them to set up long-term periodization for strength and conditioning. Now, my background has allowed me some leniencies in terms of what I believe to be the necessary techniques to get to that goal-setting status. Now, when I speak to you guys, sometimes it'll look like I'm staring right at you, but I probably don't even see you. I just get off and I start talking, so don't take it like as a creepiness as I get close to you, okay? But what we're going to talk to a little bit is this concept. Okay? And the concept is ordinary goal setting for extraordinary results. So what is the difference between ordinary and extraordinary? It's very finite. It's actually one of the most finite differences that you'll find in all of strength and conditioning, sports performance, athletics. For me, and for some of the travels that I've had, for those that have been following me for a little bit, you'll start to see that I write a lot about achieving, attacking, and going after greatness. And I don't write it from a point of, this is how you conquer the world. I write it from a position of, I have incredible gratitude towards the opportunities in which I get to enjoy through the endeavor, which has been strength and conditioning and sport. So when I think about the difference between ordinary and extraordinary, it's the details. It doesn't matter if you're taking it from the athletic standpoint, from the coaching standpoint, it's the details. It's a story. Everything that we do as an athlete, everything that we do as a coach, inevitably is a story of some form or another. So let me identify what I mean when I say the difference between ordinary and extraordinary is a story. And I'll tell a story. All my stories are true. Everything that I am about to tell you has happened to me. This one in particular is rather enjoyable. One time, I found myself through the avenue of athletics, sports performance, and coaching, standing in the wilderness, staring into the sky in Scandinavia. Pretty ordinary story. The real story goes a little like this, and this is the difference between an ordinary and an extraordinary experience. One night, while I was lying in bed, at about 2 in the morning, I was awoken by light. And the light that awoke me coming through the window, I'm just going to laugh because I know it's coming. The light that was coming through the window was so intense that it caused me to sit up and go out and take a look. And it was the Aurora Borealis, what we think of as the Northern Lights. So I got out of bed, walked downstairs. I was staying in a small cottage on the edge of the wilderness in the rural part of Finland. And as I made my way outside, I walked through what was going to soon be snow-covered ground. It was mid to late December. And as I walked out to the precipice of the wilderness, I stood there by myself, isolated from the world. And I stared up at this light show, which was the Aurora Borealis. And as I stood there at the edge of the wilderness, it was one of those moments where it was nothing but complete darkness. If anyone's ever been deep in the wilderness at night, the only light was the sky. I knew that my two eyes looking into the wilderness were probably looking at about 1,000 eyes looking back. And as I stood there looking at that wilderness, I just relaxed. And I thought about everything that I'd experienced up to that point in my life. It's 5 years ago. And then I heard this word break the crisp Finnish air. And it was a Finnish word that, if you translate it completely, it means gold. And it's kulta. And I could hear it, and it was a woman's voice, and it was kulta, kulta. And she was frantic. And I could hear it. And as I stood at the precipice of the wilderness, looking into the Aurora Borealis, I realized that she was calling me. And what I realized at that moment is kulta, when you have it in a romantic setting, means honey. So a woman was calling honey, honey into the air. So I was standing there, and I turned around and I looked. And standing on the deck of this cottage in the middle of the wilderness of Finland was a woman. And she was Miss Finland, wearing a onesie that looked like a cow, holding a butcher knife and a candle. True story. And as I looked to her and she looked at me with a confused look that the Finnish will often give you, very stern. They don't understand our Western ways. She's like, "Derek." And I'm like, "Yes." And she's like, "Why are you naked?" And at that moment, I realized I'd walked out into the Finnish wilderness to look at the Aurora Borealis at 3 in the morning, completely naked, because I was pulled from my bed by the magnificence of the lights that shone overhead. And she had a knife, because she thought there might be danger, and a lantern, because she's a logical person. That story is the difference between an ordinary and an extraordinary adventure. Both are true. It's the same story. You just forgot the details. The details in life and the details in goal setting will change everything that you do as a coach and an athlete. If you miss the details, you will not only miss the story, but you will also miss out on success. Okay? And what we have a tendency to see all too often is that when we go into a goal setting, performance setting, periodization setting, coaching setting, weightlifting setting, when we start to design our programs for our athletes, when we start to train ourselves, we have a tendency to think and blow through the things that will really make the difference. We'll spend all this time maximizing a deadlift, not realizing that we have a fundamental weakness in a supporting muscle that we never train. And if you go back to that detailed moment and you realize that extraordinary results are accumulation of very ordinary things that you do and don't miss. Okay? So when I look at setting up goal setting in terms of athletic, human, business, potential, I do it the same way that I set up periodization for long-term programming for athletes. I use macro, meso, and micro cycles. When you look at a macro, it's conceptual theory. It's so big and so broad and so far off, you can't even really predict what's going to happen. Okay? You don't know what's coming down the pipe. So my coach is here tonight. You're going to hear him speak tomorrow. And I was an athlete for a long time, and Judd Logan was my coach. When I started with Judd, we had a long-term plan, but we never really talked about it. What we did talk about was breaking the Canadian national record. We didn't really know when it was going to happen. We just knew it was going to happen. And that's the conceptual theory. That is the difference between macro and micro. You have an idea of something coming, but the details aren't there yet. It's too big. It's too grandiose. It's a theory. I had a theory I was going to be on Team Canada when I was 13. It was a theory. There was no practicality to it. I lived in Bullshitville, Canada. How was I going to get on a national team from a town of 250 people where my fondest winter memory was hiding inside an elk carcass shooting coyotes? How do I get from that to standing on top of the podium of my country? It's too far off. But that's where it begins. The months and weeks When you start to look at program design or you start to look at goal setting, that's the anticipated, that's the planned. So when I'm working with Kurt Roberts, who Judd and I both have a hand on as one of the up-and-coming shot putters in the world, that's the thing you start looking 12 weeks, 3 months, 6 months out on. That's the thing you can start to anticipate is probably going to happen. If you do the details and you put the pieces in place, the planned anticipated has a lot more tangible validity to it. It's starting to get much more specific. And then the reactive current, that's your microcycles. In the weight room, that's what you're doing day to day. That's your days and weeks, probably 5 to 7 days at a time. You're controlling microcycles as they evolve and as they occur right in front of you. When I start to think about goal setting, it's the same analogy that I used to use when I envisioned overcoming obstacles. So I've been fortunate that I haven't had anything really catastrophic happen to me, knock on wood, as a human being. As an athlete, I've lost the ability to walk twice in my life. And both times I came back to have success. But I've always used this as my paradigm to describe it. The micro being the finale of a goal is like the final ascent of a mountain. The meso is where you need to get serious. The macro is just getting to the base camp. Okay? When you get to base camp, you need a lot of shit, and you need a lot of help, and you need a lot of things to make that happen. But the positives of starting any endeavor from a goal-setting standpoint is you're going to fall into pretty much 3 categories: social programming, direction not destination, and the big one, you have to start cultivating a belief. You have to start programming your mind, your essence, your existence to actually get to the end of your journey. We're not talking about the details of competing on the day at the Olympics like someone like Judd Logan has done, or Adam Nelson if he's here in the back. That is very micro. That's finite. We don't even know what that's like. Listen, we may not even get there. That's a reality. So you can't plan for what you're going to fucking wear at the Olympic Games when you're starting at the macro preparation of your life as a high school senior. You can dream about it, but by the time you get there, the styles and attitudes and environment could be so much different than you anticipated. There was no way to be prepared. So when you establish the initial phase, which is social programming, you have to establish a vision, a why. Now, we can go on social media, and it's inundated with people talking about whys and selling this and Tony Robinson that, but it's still true. The why is the reason. So when I started my athletic career, it was very simple. I lived in a town of 250 people, and in the middle of nowhere, Canada, we had more wolves than dogs. We had more elks than cows. But when I was growing up in that town, I had this concept in my head, and it wasn't Olympic sports. To be completely honest, it was the WWE. It was television. So every day I would act out a character from wrestling. I wanted to be bigger than my town. I wanted to be bigger than life. And every day after I would go out or after dinner, I would jump on my trampoline by myself in the wilderness, and I'd be dropping elbows, and I'd be wearing the belt, and I would be reenacting these visions of grandeur. But what the why was, at that stage, in the conceptual theory stage of my goal setting, was getting out, was getting on that one road that went north and south, and it only went north and south in my town, and getting on it going one direction or the other, which I did. But that was my why. I had to get out, and I needed a lot of equipment to do it. I didn't know where I was going. I had to be fully packed for that adventure. And as I moved, direction, not destination. I truly believed that I was going to go to a small Canadian college, maybe. I was not academically on top of my game in high school. I didn't like school. But I knew that I had to do something. So I thought I was going to go to a small school in Canada, if I was lucky, and more than likely play some volleyball, which I played all through my schooling years, and maybe water ski professionally. Still conceptual. I knew I was an athlete, but I had no guidance. But I knew I had to move in a direction, but I didn't know the destination. The same thing holds true when you're setting your goals. In the initial phases, it's not so much about going, this is who I am and what I'm going to do. It is take action and begin the process. If you have a person that's trying to lose body fat, and their end goal is to be 6% body fat, super lean, have all these Instagram likes, maybe show an ass shot or two on a Tuesday just to get their likes up. The reality is you have to start thinking about that in terms of not so much that finite goal at the end, but just get them moving. You got to get them moving. You got to get them training. You got to get them sweating. You got to get them thinking about nutrition. There is no destination, just direction. Take action. Take any action. And cultivating a belief. This is a big one. And this is something Judd and I talk about it intensively. Bert and I have talked about this off and on for 20 years, and it keeps coming full circle. Brandon and I talk about this today when we were sitting together. Focus on a conceptual ideals. Generalizations, not specification. Okay? In the generalized idea of ideals, what you're really focusing on is perfect scenarios. Never envision greatness in the idea that it's going to be a failure. If you do that, you're failing from the initiation of a dream. Your dream is literally a failure, because that's all it is at this point, conceptual theory. If you're dreaming about success as a failure, you'll never get started in the first place. When I was 15 years old, this is ridiculous, but I used to, in the shower when I was 15, pretend that back then I was on the early edition of Jay Leno. And every once in a while, I would just rehearse this entire monologue and conversation I'd have with Jay Leno. Did I want to be an actor? Not really. I mean, sure, it'd been cool, but what I wanted to be was bigger than my town. It's a conceptual theory, but it was positive and it was motivating. And when I thought about stuff like that, it motivated me to train. It motivated me to work harder. It motivated me not to think about the people in my town that believed that when you hit a certain age, you got married, you moved next to your parents, and you never left. Because if I was programming my brain to be on Jay Leno, which was in Hollywood, and I'm living in British Columbia, by default, I was already programming my psychology to leave my town. Because I knew that my dreams and my excitement weren't going to happen in the confinement of 250 people. Generalization, not specification. You don't know what's going to happen. I still haven't been on Jay Leno. Probably never will be since he retired. Okay? But I've done some pretty cool shit. So I've had a lot of success that has replaced that, but it's replaced it because it allowed me to keep moving in a direction. Okay? As you move from macro to meso, doesn't matter if it's program design or goal setting, things are starting to get more specific. You're starting to lock in beliefs. You're starting to have to isolate ideals that are putting you on a path. Things that you do on a regular basis are going to start to show up as the end result of what you become. Okay? Same as in program design or periodization, you're starting to talk months and weeks. You can anticipate what's coming. Okay? When that happens, your path is yours, solidify self, cultivate a universe. What this means, in a nutshell, is that you start to isolate who you are as a human being in terms of what you're trying to achieve and what you want to achieve as a successful person on this planet. If your goal is to go overseas and help the hungry and build houses and do those things, that is you and you alone. You're going to be hard-pressed to find somebody that wants to get on that plane with you. So you're going to have to start to turn very internal and very specific to who you are as a human being. You're no longer going to be able to depend on a peer group as much. You're going to no longer be able to depend on society to give you an identity. Because I'll tell you what, as a hammer thrower from a town of 250 people that did not know what the hammer was, in a sense, I was creating something that had never been created. Granted, the rest of the world knew what it was, but I didn't know what the rest of the world was at that point in my life. But I had to start believing in myself at that phase of my existence because that's the only way that I was going to be successful. Okay? when the path is yours, you have to start to identify who you are, who your athlete is, who you are going to become as a person. What is your niche? What is your niche in life? Are you an athlete? Are you a musician? Are you a singer? One of my good buddies is going through a bit of a crisis right now. He's an electrical engineer, but he's also the front man for a band that's just on the verge of breaking very big, very big. And he said to me last week, he goes, I'm in a position where I feel like my real life, which is his job as an electrical engineer, is hindering him from literally becoming a rock star, from literally following his intrinsic passion. He is putting off his ability to solidify his niche traits, which is one of the best guitar players in the city of Denver, along with his band, for something that is not intrinsically a part of who he is. And that is a tough spot to get. And that's a spot where you have to start making some hard sacrifices. If you want to go down the road of a collegiate athlete that wants to pursue an Olympic dream, you have to get ready for the fact that you're going to be grinding penniless. You're going to be grinding, living 5-6 to a house. It's going to be fun. You're going to get in some shenanigans. Don't let me bullshit you. We did some crazy shit. But the thing is, it's a hard road. It's a road that is very, very enduring for a lot of people. From there, you have to solidify who you are, because a lot of people are going to turn on you. They're going to tell you to step away from what you're achieving, to take the easy road, to take the road that maybe doesn't have the same rewards at the end, but maybe has a consistent payout. Maybe it's their own fears. They want you to follow their niche traits, right? But in reality, you have the evaluation of the social and psychological limitations, both external and internally. Okay? You have to look at the pressures that are being put on you to prevent you from achieving that goal, that are being put on you so that you don't succeed. And I'll tell you what, the reality that a lot of people have a hard time accepting, the better that you get in life, doesn't matter if it's business, your marriage, your relationships, your sport, your music, the better that you get at it, and the more that you separate yourself from the mean of humanity, from that middle, the more those guys will try to pull you back to center. It's a human trait to pull mediocrity to the middle and ostracize greatness. And it's a tough, tough thing to accept. We have a tendency to celebrate greatness, right? And this room's going to be a little bit of a different nut than most, but you guys deal with it when you leave. We come here for the collective belief of greatness, because we believe in something that is happening here right now. But when you get away from this and you're grinding out your 2-hour session at 6 a.m. and you're going back at 5 p.m. to do your metabolic work, and you're doing this day in and day out, and you have a significant other, and that significant other loves you but doesn't understand this passion, this drive, this desire, this intrinsic need to achieve something, to leave a mark, a legacy, a belief that you were greater than what you were when you started. They don't do it to hurt you. They do it because they don't understand, and they will have a tendency to pull you back to center. They will have a tendency to put the reins on the horse that runs the fastest, because they want all the horses to run together. And it's a very difficult place to be, and you have to be very, very solidified in self to understand that maybe some things will come to an end in your life for the greater progression of the existence of you as a human being. That's a reality. Greatness is an individual road, and if you're lucky, you will run into other great people, if you're lucky. But you have to work for it, and you have to look for them. An analogy that I always use for greatness, and it just came to me, and I wouldn't have normally said it, but I'm going to throw it out right now because, let's face it, I'm making up most of this on the spot. When you think of greatness in itself is a fast-moving train. Bless you. Greatness in yourself is a fast-moving train. And a lot of people want to get on the train of greatness. But the reality is the train of greatness does not stop at the station. It does not. We like to think it does. It doesn't even fucking slow down. That's reality. And what you'll see when that train of greatness goes by in a field that you're passionate about and you see other great people, there's one thing that they all do. And you'll see it when I speak about it. People that chase the train of greatness do not wait for it to stop at the station. They reach out and grab it as it goes by, and they hold on like hell. And the reason why great people doing great things are so far and few between in terms of their ability to help others do great things is because they're holding on so god darn hard to that train that they can't let go to help you. They can't. It's going too fast, and if they let go, they lose it. It's not an easy thing to hold on to. That's why some of the greatest knowledge you will ever get in life is from the people that rode greatness until the end and then got off at the station when they were done. And when they get off when they're done, they have no problem telling you what you have to do. It's wisdom. It's wise people. It's people that you should listen to when we have a tendency not to anymore. How did I learn about greatness in track and field and hammer throwing? This man. 4 Olympics. He was my coach. He had gotten off the train, and he was ready to help others get on. But it was still the same answer. Judd, how do I get on the train of greatness? I've been waiting at the fucking station forever. And he's like, oh, you don't understand. See those guys about 20 feet before the station? Yeah. Watch and see what happens. And as that train comes, some jump out, they grab the railing, and they blur by you. And you never have a chance to see them or catch them again because you were hesitant to reach out and grab greatness. Greatness does not wait. And everybody has a greatness in them. And people say, well, that's not true. Not everybody can be LeBron James. You're absolutely right. The last time I checked, LeBron James didn't climb Everest. So whatever you think is a limitation is more so a genetic manipulation of who you are as a person. You just have to find the things that you're intrinsically meant to do. If you're meant to read, write, produce, talk, sell, maybe you're not meant to win the Olympics in weightlifting. That's just something you do for fun. What you're really meant to do is change the world in a different endeavor. You have to remember that greatness doesn't mean that you follow the stream of mediocrity. Greatness is finding that niche which is you. It's solid, it's solidified, it's one of a kind. Now, it'd be cool if we could all go to the Olympics and win that, though. Cultivate a universe, right? Like, this is the big one. Cultivation of a universe. Begin the process of establishing yourself as a vision of the end, okay? This is where you have to start projecting your beliefs into the future. It doesn't matter if it's your military career, your sports career, your business career, your marriage. You meet a chick you really like, you're dancing. You're dancing at a club, it's early. You don't even know if she'll see you naked, right? Okay? But you really like her. That's the macro level. You don't know where it's going. But then you start dating her a little bit. You go for coffee. You realize she's really interesting and funny. She doesn't think you're ridiculous. That's a mesocycle. But in the mesocycle, you got to start thinking, this chick's pretty cool. Am I going to spend the rest of my life with her? I'm going to get to the micro level. I'm going to change dirty diapers and scream at each other while we're standing in the kitchen for no reason, right? It's all the same. But that's what happens. The vision of the end. And we all have an end. Okay? We all have a mortality. We all have a clock that's ticking. And that's why time is so important. I once said, the greatest commodity that we all have when I present is time. I refuse to accept $1 from Sorinex to speak because I, right now, am being paid by your time. I'm fortunate. I travel the world in a very weird way. Your time is my payment. My presentation to you is an exchange. That's how it works. But you have to have a vision of that end. Ooh, now we get specific, right? You can see the climbing theme. I pulled some stuff off the internet. I'm a magic Googler, okay? Micro preparation, that's the top of the mountain. You're ascending, right? You're getting to the peak. You're getting to the point where you're having to get very specific. You leave most of your shit at base camp at this point. You only take each day what you need. You only hang on to that what's going to get you to your end, okay? In a relationship setting, that's your partner, that's your wife. You're not going to the club anymore to pick up chicks. You got it. That's it. That's that one, okay? When you look at it, it becomes very selfish, okay? Singularity. Winning is a pattern. Reality is a routine. That's a big concept. Singularity, refusal to accept, adherence to self, psychological singularity. In sports, this is as we're peaking towards a championship. This is as we're getting to the end. We're almost at the Olympics. We're chasing down those final inches. We're chasing down that ability to make it in the NFL. Refusal to accept. And this is where it gets tough for some people, because you have to stay coherent to the belief of self in a strength and conditioning format or setting. What we'll typically see as an analogy, and Judd and I have talked about this a lot, and I hope I don't say it because he was planning to say it tomorrow, but it doesn't matter. He's a magician up here, okay? But it's better to have complete faith in a bad program than no faith in a good one, okay? You are better off to have blind, driven desire and belief without any distraction when you get to that micro level of goal setting. You are all in. You are 100% committed to the concept of what you're trying to achieve. And you can't let things or anyone break free. It is a complete and adamant adherence to self. Okay? It doesn't mean that you're an ass. It just means that you and you alone are in control of what's going to happen to you as a human being in that moment, on this planet, in that business deal, in that courtroom, on that field. You. That's it. There's no more excuses. Take ownership. Psychological singularity. You have to start weeding out distraction. You have to start focusing on self. You have to start pinpointing desire, and you have to understand direction. Winning is a pattern. It's an affirmation of routine. Everything is a routine. Everything about success and goal setting is repeating the same habits, driving the same desires, and pushing the same motivations over and over and over. Nobody has ever won a championship by doing it different every single day and expecting there to be a magical result. It's, in a sense, the opposite of crazy, okay? Winning, achieving, goal setting, it's routines. It's mimicking greatness. Taking your weaknesses and repeating them until they're good, repeating the good until they're great, believing that great will be incredible. Repetition of skill, even if it's psychological repetition. The idea of getting up and journaling in the morning, talked to Rudy about this yesterday, journaling ideas, journaling beliefs, it's just routine. It's a manifestation, a reinforcement of ideas. And the verbalization of a vision. This is where people have a tendency to stumble in the finish line. We have a hard time admitting that we're chasing greatness as individuals. We have a hell of an easy time selling other people, okay? But unless you're slightly sociopathic, it's very hard to get up here and be, I am the greatest, suck it, right? We're not designed to be that way, nor should we be. But internally, there has to be that mechanism. I believe verbalization of vision and verbalization of success is a survival mechanism that we ignore. It's not just enough to make it to 90 and be like, pull the chute and be like, 90, that was a good life. But was it? Did you live or did you exist? Two different things, okay? And a lot of people are existing, not a lot of people are living, because they don't verbalize the vision. They don't take what they want intrinsically that is going to make them a happy, great, and powerful human on this planet and turn it into something that they're willing to stand behind. Listen, we're in this room right now, not so much to hear me speak, but we're in this room right now because the equipment behind you is of such quality and such belief was put into it by a family that built it and designed it that it's the best, right? That's why we're here. Because something, a vision, was such a strong belief, and they stand behind it so wholeheartedly that you guys all showed up to support it. And in a roundabout way, you get to become a part of a bigger vision, a bigger belief. and it solidifies who you are. But that's, in a sense, the verbalization of a vision. That is the manifestation of a vision. Reality is a routine. You become that which you are. You become that which you are. Okay? What are you? Do you get up every day and you're just like, fuck it, life sucks, right? And you just roll out. And we've all done it a little bit, right? I've rolled to the edge of the bed. When I was training with Judd, I was only 28 years old, and I remember it clearly. I've never told him this, but it pretty much was the day I decided I was on the outs of my athletic career. But I remember rolling to the edge of the bed, had a pretty good year, was ranked number 1 in the world for a while, broke a Canadian national record. It's awesome. I rolled to the edge of my bed, I looked up, 28 years old, we'd been training real hard. We've been training hard. And I had this full-length mirror, first mistake, right at the edge of my bed. Well, sometimes it wasn't a mistake, you know what I'm saying? Right? So, but we had this full-length mirror. And as I rolled to the edge of my bed, I'm sitting there, and I'm in peak physical shape. And I looked up into the mirror, and now looking back, I know it was just weird, bad winter lighting in Ohio. And the first thing I thought to myself was, holy shit, you look old. That's what came out of my mouth. And I remember sitting there for a second, shaking it, and I remember the rest of that day moving a bit shitty. Now, I had to reset my psychology, but that was an example. You become that which you are. If you believe you're going to be old, you will be old. If you believe that you're going to be average, you will be average. If you believe that others tell you what you are told to be true, that is what you will become. You have to begin to manifest a belief in yourself that super exceeds all those things. Thoughts are a reverberation of choices, okay? Every time that you have a thought internally, and every time you have one of these ideas inside yourself, that is a reverberation of choices you're already making or choices that you're planning on making. And you need to be very cognizant of that. And you need to start working on those thoughts. So the reverberations in life and the choices that you make don't keep repeating themselves as a voice in your head that doesn't have the message that is a message of success and greatness. Habits are the manifestation of beliefs, okay? If you believe that you're not going to get the 6% body fat, I guarantee that your habits in the dining hall are not going to equate to a 6% body fat person. They're just not. Okay? If you don't believe it, it's not going to happen, no matter how hard you want it, no matter how hard you try. You have to believe. Believe super exceeds almost everything. Your belief will establish your lifestyle. Oh, you know I did it right. That's it? Okay, reality is routine. Okay. And in closing, I wrote this so you have something. And this is something that I believe in very much. And what I wrote, and I wrote this on a blog that I did for social media, and I'll read it. His voice pushed against the wind, his breath against the storm. With my hands I will hold the reins, and with your sails you will show me the world. The reality is when we start to achieve and pursue and attack greatness, it is a wild ride. It's a ride that it's not always going to be enjoyable. It's going to be rough, it's going to be challenging, it's going to push you to your limits. But in the end, you have to have that rebellious spirit to chase and goal set for greatness. If your spirit is not naturally rebellious, you'll have a hard time standing against the push of the current. Because the push of the current is going to be mediocrity. The push of the current is going to be that in which does not want you to succeed. Okay? Brandon and I were just talking in the other room on the camera. And we were talking about the fact that when we were achieving sports, it was a continuous tearing down of the walls of self and an attempt to rebuild a greater version of who we are. And when you think of goal setting, that is what's happening. You're getting to the core of who you are as a human. You're doing it in a sequential, planned fashion. And you're chasing an individual desire that not a lot of people will understand. But if you chase it hard enough and fast enough and long enough, you'll get very close to the end. And with that, I thank you.